Volume. I see a lot of questions around this. How basic or deep does this topic get?
Volume is actually very important. You don't want to ignore it. Now, compared to stocks, the volume in Forex specifically works slightly differently. In stocks, volume represents how much activity and how much money is flowing into a certain thing. But Forex, being there's no central exchange, you know it's only recording what your particular broker is doing at that moment. So let me show it to you on a whiteboard here real quick. First, we're going to go over some of the misconceptions that come around volume. One of the things that happens is when people see a movement, however it may be, they look at the colors of the volume and judge the volume based on if the color is green or red, right? Like, you've seen plenty of these type of questions come your way. Is when the volume turns green, should I do this? When the volume turns red, does that mean I should start selling? But in actuality, this just represents activity, right? It represents activity. Now, what does that mean? Because the sign is, if you're on a 60-minute candle, the way it works in the Forex market is in that 60 minutes, however many times it moves up and down, up and down, up and down, tick by tick, this thing starts to rise. Every movement, it starts to rise. So although it's not measuring the amount of money, but you have to think in this way, is who can make the prices move? Well, that's a player with some money that's coming in, and that activity is starting to rise. So that activity is important. Now, another key thing to note is, forget the colors of the movement. High activity is good in relation to its surrounding activity. So that's another important thing. So, although it sounds very simplistic, but there's all these little key things to stay on top of. Now, not just that, is when you have high activity, what's the time of day? Is this around London Open? Is this a news event that's come out? What's causing all this high activity? And with that high activity, what was the result? Okay, that's very important too. Sometimes you'll see inside of a range, you'll have quiet, high volume, quiet. But when you look at the price, nothing's really happened. There's a lot of activity, but nothing's really happened. You want a result from the activity, which is, and there it goes. There's a higher high. That gives you an indication of there's a player out there that really wants to buy this thing, and he's been loading up the orders in and out, buying as much as he can, which is causing the activities to start to rise. So on a simplistic point of view, it is important to be looking at the volumes. It gets very deep. There's a lot more to it, where what does it mean when there's high volume? What does it mean when there's low volume? What does it mean when you compare the two things? So you can get as deep as you want into the topic, but in reality is, if our job as a trader is to provide an order to a larger player, then what better information than volume to tell us there's a larger player around? So that's something to keep track of. Does all of this stuff that I just said, does that all make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
Yeah.
makes
So it's
sense.
very important to make sure that no matter what happens, is we are aware at all times about volumes, even if it's going against you. That's something we should not take lightly. We should keep track of that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.